Yep.
Yeah. Well, I need to provide my sultry tenor for you to listen to later. Editing.
Would you really call it a sultry tenor?
No, I don't have a tenor.
Okay. Hello. I don't know if I can even do it. You need like a really deep voice.
Well, no, tenors.
What is high?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's not high. It's just like
Normal.
Baritone, and then
Baritone is lower.
it's lower.
Is there anything lower than baritone?
Bass.
Bass.
Yeah. That's your Barry White.
Barry White.
Your Isaac. Oh, what's
Isaac Hayes?
Isaac Hayes.
Have you ever heard of this was a long time ago, back after the war, Vaughan Munro.
No.
Oh, that's a cool name, though.
Vaughan Munro and his orchestra. He was a band leader.
Oh, yeah.
And he did a few country western type style songs like Ghost Riders in the Sky and something like that. You listen to that on YouTube, and he is the bassist baritone you've ever heard, and I love it. It's
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Johnny Cash is like your baritone.
Yeah.
Oh, way
lower than
many
Johnny,
levels
Johnny
deeper
Cash.
than Johnny Cash.
Wow.
Many levels deep.
The Ring of Fire.
Yeah, way deeper than that. This guy, I mean, he is the quintessential bass baritone.
Oh, wow.
Vaughan Munro is a cool name. Welcome back, everyone, to the Chip Lunch Podcast, and it's exciting, as always, to have you along with us. Episode 124.
124.
124. Welcome, Braden, to the Blue Barista Lounge again.
Thank you.
It's very nice to have you along here.
It's lovely to be here.
We haven't changed the background for this podcast.
Well, it's iterative design.
Iterative
We're
design.
getting there.
But what you can't see if you are watching on YouTube is we've changed all the cables.
Yes. So hopefully you can hear it.
Yeah, hopefully you can hear
that
us.
new cable sound.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you tell?
Ray, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming along.
No problem.
And you just finished a school drop-off, which is great. And then you're here, ready to record. Can I ask you, just in terms, as Braden said, it's an iterative design, this podcast studio that we're working on here. What do you think of the table behind you? Is there any opinions on that?
The what behind me?
So apparently this is a Craig Pring's table.
Oh, okay. I didn't see it when I sat down.
Oh, no.
So it blends in so perfectly. Yeah. It's just like part of the natural environment.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, that's good. I feel like that's a good opinion.
Yeah.
Whether it was a strong
No
opinion.
notes is good.
That's right.
Yes.
No notes is good. Ray, did you have a nice morning, and are you ready to record a podcast?
Yeah, I've had 2 cups of coffee already.
Oh, fired up.
I've had no coffee yet. I'm very jealous.
Oh, sorry.
I'll get there.
Okay.
I start the day with at least one, but I was up early this morning because I meet another guy here from the church at 6 o'clock on Friday mornings downstairs in the hall, and we pray together. And
nice.
So I had a coffee early, and then I had another one a bit later on.
Okay. Is there? Do you have a particular coffee of choice?
I've got a Nespresso plunger machine at home, which
just the little capsules.
The capsules, which I really like. I got it for my birthday last year, my 70th birthday last year.
Whoa.
Use it multiple times every day ever since.
Beautiful.
Good gift then.
Do you froth the milk at all with those things?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
You have your little barista moment in the morning?
No point going half-hearted with coffee. I mean,
okay. Right.
Got to go all the way.
Well, I don't know because I don't drink coffee, so I just can't stand it.
One day when you grow up.
I always say I've got enough bitterness in my life to begin, with. Because the bitterness is the part that I don't like.
I never started drinking coffee until I was 30. I grew up in a house that everybody drank tea, and I can't stand tea.
Neither can I.
So I used to drink either, I don't know, water, soft drink, stuff like that, juice, and then, I don't know, some point or other when I was about 30, I sort of had a cup of coffee at one time. I thought, this is okay.
Okay.
Went from there.
There you go. You love tea, Braden?
Yeah, love tea.
What's your tea of choice?
Well, black tea normally. I don't mind a green tea, but never milk or sugar. No, that's the easy way.
Oh, you never have milk?
That was the way I was raised.
I was raised proper.
Yes. But yeah, I don't know. I think my mum was the one who got us drinking tea.
Well, it's in my mum loves tea. My wife loves tea, but
my daughter lives on green tea. No milk, no sugar.
Yeah. I just feel like it's like I'm drinking bathwater.
I just never acquired a taste for tea.
Yeah, same. I tried it. Same with coffee. Tried it and was like,
lucky this isn't a tea podcast.
It is the Chip Lunch Podcast. Speaking of which, Ray, how do you like to have your hot chips?
I'm a Chip Buddy fan.
Oh, yes.
A bread roll.
Yep.
Chips on it and tomato sauce. I don't usually take tomato sauce except on chips on a bread roll.
Oh, that's the only time you like to have tomato sauce.
Occasionally on a bit of sausage, but rarely I'd have tomato sauce. I don't do a lot of sauce, but I love the Chip Buddy. It goes all the way back to my apprenticeship days.
Yeah.
Oh, really? What did you...
You could... When I went to... part of the apprenticeship was you had to go to TAFE, and I went to TAFE once a week, and at Broadway, the Sydney School of Graphic Arts, and the canteen there did Chip Buddies, which was outstanding.
They were really good,
Do you remember how much they were?
Oh, good question.
10 cents.
10 cents?
Okay.
Really? Goodness me. That's great. That was so cheap for you.
That was the early 70s.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah, that's true.
I remember, a hot chip roll with gravy at Wollongong Uni was $3.
Okay.
That's still pretty good.
That was
I feel like.
that was your go-to if you wanted a cheap carbs on carbs kind of experience.
Fall asleep in a lecture.
Yeah, exactly.
Ray, I was just going to ask though, what type of salt do you like on those chips?
Just a little bit of ordinary plain salt, not a lot of salt.
Yeah, okay. There's a long-running debate on this podcast about whether chicken salt is better than plain salt.
I'm not a big chicken salt fan.
Me either. I'm with
like
you.
You're picking guests now. We've had quite a streak of plain salt, I feel like.
Hey, yeah, I asked them before they come on, do you like plain salt or chicken salt on your chips? If they say plain salt, I'm like, you're in.
The chicken salt blacklisted.
Oh, well, I've double booked you. I'll find another
I think
date.
we have space for you in 2026.
It's going to be a soft pass. What is it? Is that what they say? Yeah, soft pass. Meaning, I just don't want to tell you how I really feel about it. So Chip Buddy, I mean, do you make them at home now?
Not so much anymore. I mean, I don't take a lot of bread now. I mean, I think 2 years ago I sort of got type 2 diabetes, so I sort of changed my dietary habits quite a lot. Now I eat a lot of tuna and stuff like that, which surprised me because I'm not a seafood person and I never liked tuna.
Yeah.
But
like the coffee.
Sorry?
It's a bit like the coffee.
Yeah,
later in life.
Coffee's that's okay. I mean, the dietitian told me coffee was okay.
Okay.
They insisted I should get into tuna, and I sort of eased my way into it, and
grew into
have tuna every day. So for lunch,
oh okay,
tuna and rice and stuff like that.
Yeah, sweet.
Good.
All right.
Do you have the option?
Yeah, the what?
More healthy option.
More healthy option. Never had tuna and chips together, have you?
No, but there's a thought.
Yeah,
because they now have those packets of McCain microwave chips in the supermarket. They're in a box, and you just throw the box into the microwave. And I've had that once or twice.
Oh, have you? Yeah.
They're very nice. Yeah. Crinkle cut chips, or you can get the shoestring.
Crinkle cut. Not many people have said they like crinkle cut.
Crinkle cut was it's good. It's a go-to. It's a go-to for like your oven chips.
Yeah, they were. Yep.
I can't remember going to many like chip shops that have crinkle cut chips.
No, probably because it takes more effort, more labour.
Yeah, and probably more wastage.
Trouble with heating chips up in the oven is you just got to get them right.
Yeah.
It's hard to get them crispy.
Yeah. Whereas if you throw these McCain microwave chips, if you give them the right amount of time, they come out perfect.
Oh,
there you go.
There we go.
Hot tip on the Chip Lunch podcast.
Yeah.
Ray, the second question we ask everyone is, can you please tell us, how did you become a Christian?
Good question. Being a baby boomer born in the early 50s, as most baby boomers of that era did, kids of those days went to Sunday school. And I lived in Merrylands, that's where I grew up. My mum was a Christian and she sent me to Sunday school, St Matthew's in Merrylands, and I went there every week from about age 4 through to probably 13.
Yeah.
When I was 13 and I went into high school and went into the youth group, and for some reason back in those days, it's mid-60s, as time went on, boys started dropping out of youth group.
Yeah.
And I think when it got to the fact that there were only 2 boys left and a whole bunch of girls, I mean, at 13 you're sort of not really thinking about that aspect of life, and I thought, I don't want to be in a youth group with all these girls, so I quit.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, being at high school, you get pulled in different directions by different things, different friends and things like that. So I fell away. I mean, I can't honestly say I was a Christian. I mean, you have to really make that decision. And I went along to Sunday school and I believed everything that I was being taught and I was quite happy with it. And so that's sort of temporarily where it ended. And then I went through my teenage years and then into my 20s, and then I met my wife Janet when I was in my mid-20s, and she lived in the eastern suburbs at Coogee, and we got married, and we started attending St Jude's Anglican Church in Randwick, which was, I haven't been there for many years now. We were married there, and our first son Peter was christened there, but we attended there, and that was a very fine church. And after we lived in the eastern suburbs for 5 or 6 years, we moved to the Shire here in Miranda in 1986. And when we first arrived, we tried St Luke's up the road there, and no disrespect to St Luke's, but we didn't like St Luke's.
Well, yeah, it was in 1986.
It was 1986.
So, yeah, to take it personally.
And but my wife's parents, Joyce and Cess, they moved with us to the Shire, and we shared a house. We're still in the same house. And they went to St Luke's, so they became regular attenders at St Luke's, and we sort of floated around a bit, and we tried Heathcote Engadine Baptist Church for a while, and nothing really clicked. And then our son Peter, when he was old enough to go to Sunday school, we brought him through a connection at his school. We brought him along to Miranda Congregational Church Sunday school when the church was over where Westfield now sits. And he started attending Sunday school there, and so we would come along to anniversary services and special services, so a few times a year, and without really fitting in or feeling part of it, we just came along. But come along to 1997, the famous year. A lot of things happened in 1997. Lady Diana was killed, and my father-in-law, who lived with us, passed away, and a few other things. But anyway, in November of 1997, my son Peter, who by then was, I think he was 14 or 15 or something. Can't remember how. He's 40 this year. So however that maths works, he was in the youth group, and he came along to a youth service here. And this particular night, for some reason, something enticed me to come to that particular service. And the pastor, one of the pastors, there were three pastors. One of the pastors was somebody known to Soul Revival, Dave Burton.
Oh, yeah.
And he was coming to the end of his time here. He was moving on, but he still had a few weeks to go, and he was preaching through a series on the book of James. And this one night in November 1997, I think it was about the 16th or something like that, I came along to the youth service, and I sat there, and Dave started preaching, and almost from the time he first opened his mouth, funny things started happening in my head that I still can't explain. I can only imagine it was the Holy Spirit was now deciding, I've got you. Yep. You're not getting away from me.
Listen up.
So I listened, and I thought, wow. And I spent the next week very confused about the things I'd heard and trying to put it all together. So I thought, I'd come back and hear some more. So I came back the following week to hear some more of his continuing series on James.
I do love James, by the way.
Yeah, it's great. It's still my favourite.
I think it might be my favourite book too.
And from that point onwards, I've never left.
Wow.
Yeah. I think in those 20-something, nearly 30 years, I've only probably missed about 5 Sundays in all that time. I just wanted to keep coming back. So I define that time as when I became a Christian, mid-November 1997, because I feel that's when the Holy Spirit convicted me that this was the time that you belong to God and you've got to do something about it. And So I did.
How old were you then?
I was 44 by then. So I remember the Ollie, who was the senior pastor here at the time, said I was one of the oldest that he'd come across personally to come to Christ. I mean, the thing is, it's a funny situation. It's hard to work out because I always thought I did.
Yeah.
I always thought I was a Christian, but in hindsight, I probably wasn't. Not a committed one anyway. I mean, I sort of had some of the head knowledge, but, was I living a Christian life? No. But anyway, that time in 1997, and the pastors here were wonderful. Graham Best was somebody who encouraged me greatly, and I became great friends with him, and we ended up running the men's ministry together and things like that. So 1997 November, that was when I put down as the time I became a Christian.
What do you think noticeably changed for you from that November 1997? Do you think, like, what did you stop doing, or what decisions did you make differently?
Probably nothing straight away. I mean, I think at first you do a lot of thinking. You're trying to put it all together, and I think in those times, most people, especially in my family, would think I was quite an angry person. I didn't stop becoming angry straight away, but I probably felt after a while inside myself I was becoming less angry. And as I still have my moments, but I don't consider myself an angry person now, but others might disagree. But I don't know. It was just a case of trying to change your life, but trying to get rid of the old nature as well.
Yeah.
And sometimes trying to get rid of the old nature can be very hard. Yes. There will be times when it'll come back, and you just try and work hard to overcome it. I still consider myself a work in progress. I think everybody has moments in their life where their old nature comes back to them from time to time, and you've just got to be aware of it and work through it and make an effort to not let it take you over again.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Can I just rewind a little bit, and can you tell me what it's like growing up in Marylands in the 70s? We talked about chip buddies being only 10 cents. What else do you think is different, like from growing up now until nowadays?
The Marylands of today and the Marylands of the 50s and 60s is not the same place. The culture of Marylands has completely changed. My sister still lives in the house that we grew up in.
Oh, wow.
When my parents passed, we shared it, and I sold my half to her, and because she wanted to stay there. The Marylands of the 50s and 60s, in reflecting now in hindsight, the whole time of the 50s and 60s was a wonderful time to be alive in Australia. I find being alive in Australia now in the year 2024 very discouraging. I mean, there is so much happening in the world. Australia truly was the lucky country in those days. It was a safe country. It was a beautiful, pleasant country, and so much has changed in so many ways. The world became closer. Once upon a time, Australia was so far away from everybody that you could feel that you were unique. Now we're just the same as everybody else. We're just part of a big, wide world, and there's lots of bad things out there.
Right.
And the only thing that can keep us safe is the gospel.
Yeah, right.
And trying to stick close to it, and living your life through the gospel, I think, keeps you safe.
Did your parents go to church, or did they just send you along?
My mother did early.
Yeah.
She was a Sunday school teacher and that kind of thing. But I think once she had 3 kids, and she didn't drive. My father didn't drive. He had a driver's license, but he didn't drive because he liked to drink, so he didn't drive. But my mother found it then difficult with 3 kids, to get along to church and things like that. But my mother was very much a believer.
Were you so you're the eldest?
I'm the eldest, yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Very cool.
What's the school situation like that? You just go to Maryland's public school?
I went to Maryland's West Public School and then Maryland's High School.
Okay. What was high school like for you?
I went to the first day of high school, I went with an enormous amount of anticipation. Let me just step back. Year 6 was the greatest year I ever experienced.
Ooh, wow.
Because the teacher I had in Year 6, the first day of Year 6, I thought to myself, oh no, I've got the worst teacher in the entire school. He had a reputation for being a hard nut.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm not going to like this. By the end of the year, I did not want to leave. He was the greatest teacher that I had ever come across. He was just a leader of people and a teacher who was just enthusiastic for everything that he taught. And I rose way above my levels that I'd been prior to that. So based on that, I headed off to high school with the greatest of anticipation, and it was the greatest letdown of my life.
There's only like one or two teachers you remember fondly, like through your whole time at school, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just didn't. I floundered when I got to high school. I was one of these ones that you got a different teacher for English and a different teacher for maths and a different teacher for history and stuff like that, and I didn't. Took me a long time to fit into it, so I was keen very early on. The earliest possible moment that I could leave, I left.
Is that year 10? Was that still year 10, or did you
I
go
think
earlier?
Earlier than that. I went year 9.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, once you'd reached a certain age, then you could leave, and even then, even though it took me 6 months, I wanted to work in the printing industry, and I didn't straight away. I went off and worked at Grace Brothers, which now is called Myer. I worked at Parramatta, and I worked in a little electrical factory out west and a few different places. But I eventually got into the printing trade and spent my entire working life there.
Just before I ask you about the printing trade, though, in the 70s, mid-70s, did you have the long flowing hair?
Yes, and I'm glad there aren't many photos.
Oh, I wish we had one.
I managed to avoid the cameras very well, but because now that I look back on it, it was horrible.
Do you have the flares as well?
The works.
Oh, yes. So good. Open neck shirt.
They were horrible.
Oh, beautiful. There's something cool about it, though. I don't know what it is.
It's come back around, right?
Yeah.
Everything comes back around.
No, the long hair, I mean, it was awful.
Bit of hard work too, I reckon, keeping that long hair going.
Oh, yeah, it was hard work.
I remember there's some story about, I can't remember if it's like Liverpool or Manchester United teams back in the 70s, and that like people apparently used to fight over the hairdryer. Like after games, because they're like, oh, we're going out after this, so I need to get the hair right. Yeah, and they'd have a few battles over the hairdryer. Yeah, it's an interesting situation. Can I ask you though? I'm sorry, you mentioned your wife's name and I've forgotten. Janet. You said that you met, like she was in the eastern suburbs. How did you guys end up meeting? And then my next question was, you ended up going to church after that. So how did that happen?
Janet was sort of a bit of a blind date, and
you just got set up.
Yeah, sort of just through friends, and we met that way and clicked fairly well quickly. And I think after about 4 or 5 months, we decided to get married. It was probably then 6 months after that, but within a year of meeting, we were married. She had been, prior to meeting me, a semi-regular attender at the Brethren Church at Waverley. Her mother was an attender at the Brethren Church. Her father wasn't a church attender, but when they moved to the Shire, I mean, her mother and father were both in their 70s when they were confirmed at St Luke's.
Wow.
So they were confirmed by Glenn Davies, who was the Archbishop, prior to being the Archbishop, and he said they were the oldest couple that he'd ever done confirmation classes on.
Yeah.
So that was pretty special. But anyway, so yeah, we started going to, we were married in St Jude's at Randwick, and the Reverend there, Reverend Lovett, was a wonderful man, and we warmed to him very quickly. Just a quick little story. when our son Peter was born, let me go prior to that. When I was working in the printing factory in the city, there was a man who worked there. His name was Murray Endine, and he was probably in his 50s when I worked with him. When I first worked with him, I was only a teenager, and he was probably in his 50s. And he was, even though he was in his 50s and working in the printing industry, he was going to Bible college as well. And he then got an appointment somewhere through the Church of England, and he left. Then my son Peter was born, and we naturally had him christened at St Jude's. And by that time, Murray Endine had become the assistant minister at St Jude's at Brandwick. So somebody I'd worked with in the printing factory, he then christened our son Peter. So it was just a nice little piece of round in a circle.
Yeah, that's right. So we kind of skipped ahead a little bit. Why did you want to get into the printing industry so much?
I can't tell you that. Just something that had been in my mind from an early age, that I was attracted to the printing industry. And did
you like paper and that kind of thing?
That sort of thing. I just liked the printed product. And it was funny. I mean, I thought I was going to be a printer, but as it turned out, I became a typesetter.
Oh, what's the difference?
Well, the typesetter is the one who, these days, you just sit in front of the computer and type,
that's what I'm asking.
Do the brochures and things. Whereas the printing, you're on the press with the inks and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, wow.
And that's what I wanted to do. But in the days when I did it, it was hot metal, lead printing. Every character was an individual piece of lead. That was monotype, and then there was linotype, which is like in the newspapers. And the place I worked in had both, so we got to work on both. But then I moved towards the monotype, and so probably then by the mid-70s that had run its course, and everything had started to come in then with computer, and this is pre-personal PCs, so there were dedicated computers just for doing typesetting and printing and things like that. So then spent my entire working life doing that and loved it.
Yeah, right. And you had to, you said because you got the chip buddy, you needed to get an apprenticeship first. What's that like? Because you're not a Christian then, because often we ask that question, it's like, oh, what is it like being a Christian at uni, or what's it like being a Christian at school? You weren't a Christian yet.
No.
What was it like being an apprentice? I mean, because I work, like my other job is working in a building company, and you see apprentices, and it's interesting how poorly some apprentices are treated.
Yeah.
Which I don't appreciate very much, and I'm thankful that the place that I work at, they try not to be like that. Was it difficult growing up as part of that apprenticeship to do the thing that you actually wanted to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think at first there'd been a lot of especially of apprentices in those days. There'd been previously a lot of bullying and things like that of apprentices, but fortunately when I came in, that was starting to end. There were a lot of practical jokes, nothing harmful, more humiliating than harmful.
Okay.
But
do you want to tell us one?
Oh, like some ridiculous things.
A right-handed screwdriver.
Yeah, the left-handed screwdriver. And go up and ask somebody in the office for a long wait, and he'd say, "I just sit down, and I'll be right with you." And then after about 15 minutes, he says, "I think you've waited long enough."
That one's pretty funny.
More just humiliating. I mean, prior to that, there'd probably been some nasty things, but I avoided all those things. Okay, but having said that, there were a lot of rough characters because it was in the beginning. It was a factory, and there were a lot of rough characters in there, but there were a lot of good people in there as well. Coincidentally, somebody who I worked with from when I was about 16 in the printing trade was a Christian, and I'm still very good friends with him, and he goes to Gymea Anglican,
cool.
Alan Webb. And
I know.
You know Alan Webb. Stuart knows him very well.
Yep.
And so he was somebody who I'd known and still know. And so, it's probably good that there are men like that around.
Yeah, okay. Especially in that scenario where it's a bit of a rough... So I want to delve into this printing business a little bit more.
Yeah, because it's very foreign.
It's foreign to us, isn't it?
Well, I worked as a graphic designer, but I never had to deal with the...
Actually, when I retired, my official title was graphic designer.
Yay.
And I didn't really like.
Joining a church of graphic designers.
I didn't like the title because I was a tradesman typesetter.
Yeah.
And they forced this title of graphic designer on me because when I retired, the advertising agency, I was finished in an advertising agency, and we were doing work for ANZ Bank and Westpac and things like that. So when you'd finished a document, you'd send them the PDF, and you had to put your name and your position and your phone number at the end of it, and they didn't understand what a typesetter was or a Mac finished artist or something like that. So you had to put graphic designer. Yeah. And I thought I did 5 years of intense apprenticeship to be called a graphic designer.
So to be like before the computers came in, how's that? Like, what do you actually have to do? Do you have to design all the letters?
They were created and cast out of lead on a machine called a monotype caster.
So you had to do that, I'm guessing.
No, they had people that did that. Yeah. We would sit down and there were two. If you were just doing a couple of lines of display type, they'd already been created. So you would just go to a type case and select the letters out one by one, make the words, put the spaces in, make it all even and so on. But if it was anything longer, there was a paper tape machine that you'd sit down and type on that would print out on the paper tape, and then the paper tape would go through the machine and pump it out.
Oh, okay.
So you're as a typesetter, you're literally setting the type to then go through the printing press.
That's right.
And have it pressed.
Yeah.
And there'd be like posters and things like that?
The company I worked for didn't really sort of do posters. We did a lot of different things. I mean, we did a lot of journals and things like this. A lot of advertising, but a lot of documents like the Australian Journal of Pharmacy and things like that. I mean, we also did a lot of brochures for Westpac, and this was in the very early days. I mean, when it was called the Bank of New South Wales. Yeah. And when you've got lead letters, say about 36 point, and you've got a W and an A for the word Wales, and then you've got LES. The W and the A look like they're so far apart because of they're physically on a piece of stuff. We had to get a mitre and buff it down so that you could bring the W and the A closer together. Now, if you're on a computer, you just take a few units, just track it back or something. But then you had to put it in a mitre, and a hand mitre, and sort of go like that to sort of close it together. Kerning. So
kerning. Sort of. That's where that comes from, is it?
Yeah.
When you're like buffering it down, that's kerning.
Yeah.
So I understand kerning when you just reduce it on the number.
That's little thing on a computer that you just move a bar.
Exactly.
Wow, that's really cool. You mentioned the Bank of New South Wales. It just reminded me, and like talking about apprentices. My dad's got a friend who he used to work. He went to work at the Bank of New South Wales, and they gave him a bell, and they said you have to go outside and like be like a town crier and say, "Hey, the Bank of New South Wales is now open," or something like that. It's like, gosh, how embarrassing that would be.
That would be embarrassing.
What do you think is can you have any memories of like your favourite thing that you printed or you worked on to be able to print?
I can remember my unfavourite thing.
I was like, that is definitely
the worst job.
You're a graphic designer now. You can remember the least.
The worst job I ever did was a journal called the International Rice Institute, and it was in the Philippines.
Okay,
and this was in the days before fax machines. So we would sit and do all the documents, and then we had to mail them to the Philippines so they could proofread them.
Yeah,
and then they would mail them back. So, but it was a very large book. It was like 180 pages or something. Of all these rice reports and and tables of figures and all this sort of thing.
Okay.
And I hated it because they just kept changing their mind. And this was not like you call something up on a PC or a Mac these days and you just quickly change it. I mean, these were physical changes and almost like starting again sometimes. And it went on for months and months and months, and I absolutely hated it. But anyway, favourite job? I worked in printing factories for more than 30 years, and the last printing factory I worked at was a company called Penfold Buscombe. They were at Banks Meadow, and while I was working there was one of the clients was a guy called Andrew who worked at Challenger Financial Services, and they were producing their own stuff on their Macs and just bringing it over to be printed. And through getting to know him, he then offered me a job working at Challenger Financial Services, which was at the time a growing financial services company in the superannuation pension type things. Yeah. It was at the time owned by the Packer family, majority owned by the Packer family. And so I went to work there. And I was there for 11 years until they decided to outsource their work and the whole department got made redundant. But that was very satisfying work, doing their brochures and their financial reports and things like that. And it's really spending a lifetime of setting financial reports, balance sheets, annual reports, that kind of thing, that led to me becoming the treasurer of Miranda Congregational Church, because I have no financial background like Peter Crawshaw, who was a bank manager. And even though we get on very well, sometimes when I talk to him about financial matters, we're on a different planet, because he looks at it from a different perspective than I do. But because I understand balance sheets and financial reports and things like that, it was how I sort of got talked into becoming the treasurer of Miranda Congregational Church. But anyway, so I just loved setting financial reports.
Oh, that's interesting. And how many different factories did you work in over the years?
Only two. I mean, three. The company I spent my apprenticeship at, I worked at for 7 years. And then after 7 years, even though I didn't want to leave, I thought, I need to learn more, so I need to get out and explore the big wide world. So the guy who'd hired me had started up a company in Surrey Hills, and he asked me, did I want to come and work for him? So I went there and I spent a year there. But the place that I worked my apprenticeship kept pulling me back. So I returned.
Just when I thought I got out, they pulled me back in.
I returned. And I spent 3 years there until the place at Surrey Hills pulled me back to them again. But I was only there for 6 months, and I knew, why did I do this? Back to the original. So for the third time, I went back to my original place, where I then spent the next 10 years.
Where was that, by the way?
It was in Clarence Street, 49 Clarence Street. It was an 8-storey brick building with a cage lift.
That's in the city, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And it's now been replaced by the Coopers and Lybrand building, which is about 40 stories, magnificent building. Yeah. This was just an 8-storey brick building with a cage lift. And anyway, so they then sold that building so it could be pulled down, and they moved up to St Leonard's, and I didn't want to travel to St Leonard's, and I thought, the time has come, it's time to go, and I finished up working for a place called Concord Printing at Waterloo. And I then spent... That Concord Printing was owned by the Penfolds Stationery Group, Penfolds Stationery. Yeah, I think so. They owned that printing factory, but they also owned 5 or 6 other printing factories operating independently. And a business decision in the late 90s, early 2000s saw them purchase a giant factory out at Banks Meadow, and they merged all their printing companies into one. So we all moved out to Banks Meadow, and that was a horrible place to get to. And it was actually while I was there that Andrew, my former boss, asked me to go and work at Challenger, which I did. And that was after working in the printing industry for nearly 40 years. I suddenly was working in the corporate sector, still doing the same work. Yeah. But instead of going to work in a pair of jeans and a T-shirt, I was sort of going to work, dressed up. Yeah. So to speak. And it was fun. It was working in the city. And when I first went to work for them, they were in a building at 88 Phillip Street called Aurora Place. And we were on the 40th floor of a 41-storey building, and it overlooked the harbour, the Opera House, the Harbour Bridge, and it was the most expensive piece of real estate in the whole of the Sydney CBD. And I thought to myself, how can this company spend so much money on rent when they're trying to earn money for people for their superannuation and their retirement and things like that? Anyway, they eventually wised up and they moved. But they moved into the Hilton.
Oh, really?
They rented some... the Hilton next to the hotel has got office space as well. Oh, okay. And so they moved into there. But then at the time that they made us all redundant, they then moved on back down towards the quay somewhere. So. Okay. But that was a fun time.
But then you made redundant?
I was made redundant, and the whole department and my boss Andrew, who had a lot of contacts, was asked to go in and rescue an advertising agency, which was coincidentally 2 doors away from where I did my apprenticeship in Clarence Street.
All the way back.
And he said, he rang me up and said, they've asked me to come in and fix this advertising agency up. Will you come and work for me? And I said, sure. So I then stayed there till I retired. I probably would have stayed longer, except he retired before me. and he retired before me, and then I didn't like working there when he retired.
Oh, okay.
He was the best boss I ever worked for. He didn't go to church a lot, but he certainly lived a Christian life, and he had very strong Christian ethics and still does. He had been very heavily involved in the church when he lived in Adelaide, but I probably think the thing that might have kept him from going to church a lot was he'd been married 4 times. He probably felt a little bit guilty, the fact that he'd been married 4 times.
Okay.
Wow. Anyway, his current marriage has been very successful and his longest.
Maybe he's got tired of doing it. One more question about printing. What do you think, if you wanted to tell someone who knew nothing about printing, what would you tell them?
It'd be very hard to tell them anything now. I mean, now you just you can just go onto a PC and you can create something in Word and make a PDF of it and send it to a snap printing place and they can print it for you. Yeah. Whereas in the old days, I mean, like these, for instance, when you print something in a PDF now, it comes out, you know what RGB is?
Yep.
Red, green, blue. Yeah. You can't print on a printing press with ink in red, green, blue.
Yeah.
It has to be in CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow and black.
Yes.
So we were supplied many things by people. They'd send us a PDF or they'd send us a file and it was all in RGB, so we had to sit there and painstakingly convert it to CMYK because you can't put RGB on a printing press because they don't work that way. So I would say if I wanted to tell anybody anything about printing now is that you're very lucky because it's very easy to do. Anybody can do it now.
It really is.
Yeah, very easy.
Yeah. Wow. Do you think the print business has changed heaps because of that? Because I'd feel like print is, it's almost like kind of similar. You know how vinyl records has become a bit of a thing? It's like print has become less, there's less of a need for it. But anything that is printed now is like really, like looks really beautiful. Like people that spend time on it.
Yeah. I mean, you pick up, I don't often go into bookshops, but when I do, I like to go in and just see something that looks like a quality piece of printing and pick it up and ogle it.
Give it a bit of a feel.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I love the Bible because the printed Bible is a magnificent book. And you got to imagine how much effort went into printing it. And you can imagine why some Bibles are very expensive, even though it'd be great if all Bibles were free.
Yeah.
But the amount of pages in a Bible and what you've imagined in your mind, in my mind, knowing how it was produced, must have cost a lot of money to make a Bible.
I hadn't thought of that before.
And that's why I one of my OCD things is if I'm sitting watching somebody with their Bible, if they've got a pen and they're highlighting things in their Bible, it freaks me out because I don't like people writing in books.
Oh, don't you?
It's okay if you've got an exercise book, write in your exercise book. Don't write on a printed page.
Oh, wow. So I used to be like that, but when I read my non-fiction stuff, I mark it up now.
I can't stand people who turn the corner of a page over to remember where to come back, even if it's only a paperback novel. I'm very fastidious about books and the printed page.
Well, that's interesting.
I like them to
Well, there's like a reverence into
it is,
knowing the amount of effort that went into something.
Yeah.
I just love the printed page.
There's something special about it. Like I've gone back to reading more, less digital stuff now. Like all the, like I said, non-fiction books that I read, they're all genuinely printed books. I don't like reading on screens.
I don't
most of the time. Even if I have like a long article, I'll often print that out and read it. There is something interesting about doing that, isn't there? I don't know what it is, but maybe it's the ink on the page or something.
And of course, the great thing today about the digital world is it's riddled with spelling mistakes, and it's riddled with the worst grammar that I've ever seen. I don't know where some of these journalists went to school, but they never went to any school that I ever attended.
I think that's very true. I was going to ask I know I said last question on the printing business, but like, did you have to deal with heaps of spelling mistakes and things when you were printing and you'd get really frustrated at it? Yeah,
well, the thing is, I think when the one thing they teach you to do very early on, you had to go and learn to touch type.
Oh, yeah.
And when I learnt to touch type, it was on a typewriter, a manual typewriter with blank keys.
Oh, it was blank keys?
There were nothing on the keys. It was just a blank keyboard.
Wow.
And there was a screen in front of you with a simulation keyboard, and the lights would light a B or an A, and you had to, if you had your hands in the right place on the right keys at the starting position, you'd sort of, by not looking at the keyboard but by looking at the screen, you'd move your finger. So you had to learn to touch type because you were typing onto punched holes onto paper which you could not read because they were punched holes in paper, and they were not printing words. They were just like a code on a paper that went through a machine. So if you made mistakes, it didn't become apparent until it was already been spat out, and then if you made a lot of mistakes, you've got to go back and do it again. So get it right the first time, and you don't have to do it a second time.
I'll have to, do you reckon you could still touch type?
Yeah, I'm getting it's getting harder because at home the desk that my laptop is sitting on is not the right height.
Yeah,
it's a bit too high, and I'm sort of finding my hands not in the right position, and but I can.
You'd be all right though.
I can do it without looking at the keys. If I get my hands on the keys to start, I can then type without looking at the keys because you know where they are. But sometimes I think using my index finger on the phone makes you lazy. And
I taught myself to touch type at some point. I was just like, I'm just going to do this. But like the QWERTY keyboard was created to slow people's typing down.
The reason it was created was because the manual typewriter, you'd press a key and the thing would come over,
the hammer
and if they wasn't in the configuration it was now, all the things would jam.
Oh, that's why.
Yeah.
I thought it was to slow people's typing speed down.
No, it was to speed them up because the keys would jam when the little thing with a letter on it came up to hit print on the paper.
Yes.
Had to be in the QWERTY. The person that developed the QWERTY one was so that the keys would not interfere with each other.
Oh, wow.
Otherwise, if you had like some different configuration, you'd press an A and a B or a C and an E, and that suddenly they'd just jam across each other.
Right. So. Okay. Well, I love hearing about what people have been interested in and I know nothing about, like the printing business.
It's also crazy that, you started with lead, typesetting with lead type to, just before COVID, computers, Adobe, PDFs, all that fun business. It's quite a journey.
Actually, I mean, I don't mind Adobe PDFs because one of the things that I became quite good at the advertising agency was making interactive PDFs, where the ones where you might get something from the bank and you fill it out on your screen and then you save it, and it's that's got to be created after the PDF's been made. You then have to go in it with the tools in Acrobat and put those fields in, and I used to like doing that. It was very at the beginning I thought, oh no, this is a tiresome job, But I got to be quite good at it, and then in the end, you know, I'd always have people at the advertising agency say, "Can you show me how to fix this?" Or, "Oh, now that you've got it on the screen, can you finish it for me?" Because nobody liked doing them, but I didn't mind doing them. Yeah. It's good to be good at something.
Yes.
Can you tell me? Yeah, I think you're right about that. It's good to be good at something. I think I'm still trying to get there. Working in an advertising agency, what do you think about that? That would have been very different to working in a factory.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very different.
Was it like Mad Men? Do you know the show Mad Men?
The first thing I noticed when I worked in the advertising agency were how many gay people worked there. Mm-hmm. And it's a bit of a culture shock when you're sort of not used to coming across people like that in your normal everyday life, that you're suddenly in a room full of people who are openly gay.
And that's like the workplace, isn't it? You come across different people with different lifestyles, and you're there to do a job. So it would have been very different.
I mean, as long as everybody in the workplace treats you respectfully and you're respected for what your ability is and as a person, and not condemned for being a Christian. I've never hidden that in the workplace. So one thing I did enjoy, I mentioned my boss Andrew before. When I first went to work at Challenger, the first thing he told me when he interviewed me was, he said, "This is a company that's full of internal politics." But he said, "The one thing you don't have to worry about is those politics." He said, "I'll take care of them."
Oh, okay.
And the entire 11 years I worked there, I never once had to deal with any internal politics, because he was just so good at
managing it,
looking after things and herding things off. And he was just a very strong boss, but one of the fairest people I've ever met.
Yeah, right. It's always good to have an experience like that.
Yeah, and he was his ability to deal with people, I totally believe, came from his upbringing in the church in Adelaide. So,
yeah, that's cool. Did you have something you wanted to say?
We've delved into work.
Yeah,
and it's been super fun. What does family look like for you? Like, we'll go into a different stream of life. So you met Jeanette, was it? Janet. And you have a couple of kids you mentioned over there. Yep. So you've got 3 kids.
My elder son Peter will be 40 next month. He lives in Adelaide. He's married. Yeah. Lives in Adelaide. Still a very faithful Christian. He married a Catholic lady. When they first got married, and her family is in Adelaide, that's why he moved to Adelaide. And they sort of had some sort of an agreement that one week he'd accompany her to the Catholic Church, and then the next week she'd accompany him to whatever Protestant type church that he'd chosen. But I don't think she lasted too long doing that. And but he has not dropped off. He found a Baptist church down there that he liked, and was very comfortable with that. But then they had to move suburbs, and he doesn't drive. But because of he's got some epilepsy and things like that, okay. So he doesn't drive. But so he then had to find a new church, and he sort of looked around, couldn't really find what he was looking for, and then he joined the Salvation Army Church, where he currently still goes, and so we're very pleased and happy that he's continued to be a Christian man. And my youngest son Jason attends Soul Revival MCC. Soul Revival at MCC. He does the words on.
This is you find out through this. He's related to who?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So he comes. He was here last night, I think, putting the words up ready for the weekend. Yep. He won't be here this weekend because he's going up the Central Coast. His fiancée Rachel, who lives in our house. They don't live together. I would like to say that straight up. We don't condone that kind of thing. But she lives in our house. She has her own room. Her mother still lives on the Central Coast, so they're going up there this weekend. So he won't be at church this weekend. But so he was christened in this church, attended the youth groups and the Sunday schools, and he'll be 30 this year, I think. And in between that, we have a daughter, Belinda, who has got two children and one on the way. And unfortunately, she doesn't come to church, but she has. She was part of the Sunday school scene here and the youth group and that sort of thing, but went in a different direction when she got married. But yeah.
Can I ask you, what is we always like to ask people that are parents this, is what has God taught you through being a parent?
Gee, that's a hard one. What has he taught me? He's taught me that I'm never right. Only give advice if it's asked for, because I think it's never welcome if you just give it unsolicited. I don't know. I mean, it's still a work in progress for me. I mean,
you never stop being a parent once you become one.
You never do. I mean, I'm one of these ones that doesn't matter what happens in your kids' lives. I mean, you're still there for them.
Yeah.
They're family, they're your blood. You just, and you always want what's best for them, even if they may not see that themselves. But
maybe a more recent one. What has God taught you through becoming a grandparent?
Oh,
yeah. My grandson Dylan's a bit of a challenger. He's a rascally kid.
Yeah, I like that description, rascal.
I keep telling him every day. I keep saying, "You're a rascal."
He probably likes
He's just
that.
got that cheeky grin on his face. He knows he's a rascal.
Yeah.
I think he loves. He'll do anything. He'll pull any stunt to get away with anything, and he knows that he probably can get away with it. So I think kids work you out very quickly.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
They know what they can get away with and what they can't get away with it. And being a grandparent too, I mean, you got less authority than a parent, so they can take it up a level, get away with stuff.
I mean, talking about how you said, no matter what, you're going to be there for them. It's just like for them, they're just like. I just think about it, they're just like that little toddler all the time, and you can't ever forget that time.
No.
Because I was looking at photos of my kids last night, and I'm like, oh, that's right. My son's 10 now, and I looked at photos and he was at 2.5 or something. And you're like, just like waddling around kind of thing. I'm like, that's not you anymore, but you're always with that to me. Like you always remember that. So that's why it's always like, you're going to take care of him no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, our son Peter, who's in Adelaide, I mean, when he was born, he spent the first 2 or 3 months of his life in hospital.
Really?
We didn't get to bring him home. I think we had him home for 1 week out of the first 3 months. And then when he was born, he was only 1.25 kilos.
Oh, was he premature?
Yeah. And he had a couple of problems.
Okay.
And so when we brought him home, I mean, he was so small and you just don't know if you're doing the right thing, and you just spend your whole life in a panic.
Especially when you know that those scenarios, I haven't had to experience this, but then when they're in that scenario of knowing that they're so helpless and you can only be the only one to help them in a sense, and then to add on to that, the being born premature and some of the difficulties that he had when he was first born, like they would have ratcheted that up even higher. Do you find a lot of solace in God? You weren't a Christian then, really, were you?
Yeah, I certainly wasn't saved, but I did have what I consider a Christian background and Christian beliefs.
Okay.
But I don't consider myself saved until that night here in
November
1997.
What a year. So then once why did you choose to move to the Shire? What was the thinking behind that?
We lived we were renting a unit at Coogee.
Yep.
And Janet's parents lived 2 streets away. Janet is an only child, and her parents quite a bit older. They were already in their 60s. And they were looking to sort of not be in the eastern suburbs much longer because they just didn't find, even though they'd spent most of their lives in the eastern suburbs, they were just reaching the point where the eastern suburbs was outgrowing them, and they were sort of thinking about moving, and we were not really in a position to be able to buy a place anywhere. So they offered to sell their house and go halves with us in buying a home somewhere else. And my mother-in-law's sister lived at Cronulla and was keen to have her move to this area. And we'd originally had a house down in Burraneer Bay that we were looking at, and we'd actually, we thought we were there, and then the man who was selling it suddenly got cancer and cancelled the sale. And
can I ask what road in Burraneer?
It was Burraneer Bay Road.
Oh, okay.
It was a big house on the corner. I can't think of what the corner street was. Anyway, lovely house.
I used to live in that area, that's all.
Okay.
That's why I'm asking.
And so then we live now just up on President Avenue, and apparently that house had been for sale for quite a while because nobody wanted to live on President Avenue. It was a main road. I mean, if they saw it and how busy it is now, they'd even want to live there less. It's so hard to get in and out of the driveway.
I was going to ask you that. Yeah, it must be hard to get out.
It's horrible some days.
Yeah.
People don't want to let you out. But so we made an offer on that one, and the lady accepted it because she had it for sale for a long time and wanted to get out. So we bought that. So we came in 1986, and we've been there ever since. And Janet's father passed in 97, as I mentioned before, but her mum only passed a couple of years ago at age 99. She missed the 100 by about 5 months, but she was the most faithful Christian lady I'd ever met. I mean, just never stopped thinking about God.
Yeah, right. What did she teach you about God?
To be grateful, I think. Mm-hmm. She was always grateful for what she had.
And did she live with you that whole time?
Yeah, yep.
All the way up to 99?
Yep.
Wow. She's a goer. My wife's grandmother is 97 and blows me away. She's a refugee from Latvia from World War II, and she's still going at 97.
Well, when, as I mentioned, when Janet's dad died in 1997, they were going to St Luke's. Well, then, because they didn't drive and she found it hard to get to St Luke's, she said, I'd like to come to MCC. So she was at MCC right up until she passed.
Yeah, beautiful.
Became a church member at age 80 something or other. And so while she said that Glenn Davies had said she was the oldest person he'd ever confirmed, she became the oldest person here to become a church member.
Setting records everywhere.
Yeah. It's a bit of a latecomer vibe to your family, really, isn't it?
That's right.
Also, a lot of non-drivers, which is interesting.
Well, I mean,
there's no judgment. Sorry, it's just
I mean, my dad didn't drive because he was a drinker, unfortunately. So that's why we never had a family car. I was the first one in the family to have a car. Janet's parents didn't drive. I mean, I don't know why. I think living in the eastern suburbs, I mean, the public transport was all very close and that sort of thing. And
was that the same at Maryland's though? Were you able to get around easily?
We lived at Maryland's West, which was a good 20-minute walk down to the shops down in Maryland's Main. But I don't know, walking was norm in those days.
Yeah.
What was your first car? Do you remember?
Ooh. Oh, yeah, absolutely. A 1958 FC Holden.
Joel's
I'm going to look that up, sorry.
Oh, beautiful car. I pranged it.
Did you? What happened?
I pranged it.
That's about what happened in the actual accident.
Oh, I think I went around a corner a bit too fast, and there was like a bridge. This was out the back of Greystanes, and there was a bridge around the corner, and it was. I hadn't actually ever driven around that corner before.
Yeah.
And there was a bridge, and it sort of came out a bit too far. Anyway,
came out and grabbed you.
Yeah.
So. Did you hit it into the bridge?
Yeah, it was sort of like a creek type bridge.
Oh, yeah.
And it just sort of didn't go right in, but it just sort of went over a bit, but it buckled the whole chassis. So,
what colour was it?
It was two-tone green.
Oh, so the photo I've got here is the two-tone blue.
Yeah, it was. That's it, but it was two-tone green.
Oh, wow.
Beautiful old radio in it. And
it's a nice-looking car.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a station wagon version.
Oh. Yeah, no, I had the sedan.
no, I can't have that, no.
Three-speed column shift.
Oh, up on the... What is it?
3 on the tree.
3 on the tree. Yeah, that's right. That's what it's called, isn't it? 3 on the tree, bro.
Surprised you've heard of the expression.
Oh, yeah. I'm a bit of a family history with cars, so I kind of I've heard that before.
Cost me $70.
Was that a bargain, or was that?
It was a bargain.
Okay,
I mean, the guy that I don't know what the man that sold it. It was just sitting in his backyard, and my uncle put me onto it, and we went round and looked at it, and he just said, "Well, I don't drive it anymore." And I thought, well, if it's just been sitting in his backyard all this time, there's got to be something wrong with it. But my uncle was a tow truck driver, and he knew a lot about cars, and he looked it over and he said, "It looks fine to me." So I paid the $70 and took it home, and it ran fine until I took it into the bridge.
Yeah. How long did it take you to save up $70 though? Because you wouldn't be paid that much, right? Relatively.
I mean, my first wage in the printing industry beginning of 1969 was $14.25 a week.
Wow.
I paid 25 cents a week tax. The weekly ticket into the city was $4, but as an apprentice you got half price. So it was $2 for the weekly ticket.
On the train?
On the train, yeah. A couple of dollars a week board for mum, so I don't know. I mean, I don't remember how long. Well, this was not until I was old enough to drive. I mean, I was an apprentice long before that, but no, it probably wouldn't have taken me too long. I mean, a couple of months.
Yeah, okay. It must have... I feel like there's a bit of a thing with your generation, tell me if I'm wrong, but getting a car is like just represented a whole lot of freedom. Yeah?
Yeah.
That makes sense. Because I remember, so my dad's 62, and he'd be like, why don't you want to get your license? Like, you want to get it as soon as you turn 17. But kids, even though I know that kids are like younger, they're like, why would I drive? Mum, dad take me everywhere. Like they don't care about really getting that, because the freedom is different. Like it's represented differently to them now, rather than like it would have been for your generation. I just find that interesting. That yeah. Anyway, I did find this one. That's very nice looking.
Was that pink?
I don't think it's pink. I think it's a two-tone. It's a two-tone.
There was a pink version. I think there was a light mauve version.
Station sedan. This one is. This is the station wagon.
I do like the blinds.
It's got Venetian blinds in the back.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty cool. Anyway, so once you come to MCC, so you move to the Shire, as we said, you start coming to MCC. So were you going to church at any time between when you moved here in 86 and then?
We went to St Luke's for a little while.
Yeah, that's right. You did say
and then we went to Heathcote Engadine Baptist Church for a little while, only because our son Peter, before he came to Sunday school here, he was going to preschool at Heathcote Engadine Baptist Church preschool.
Right.
And he went to preschool there, and they then used to encourage people to come along to the services on Sunday.
Yeah.
It was funny because that's when the first time we ever saw Tony Presto. And
Presto.
Who was, that's right. And when he came here as the interim minister donkey's years later, I sort of I know this man from somewhere.
Yeah, right. He looks heaps older.
Yeah, he was heaps older. He was an interesting man. He'd been a Qantas pilot and gave it away to go into ministry.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, right. And so then you end up at MCC at some point. How do you start getting involved in ministry and things like that? You talked about being encouraged to become treasurer, but that was a little bit later.
That was a long time afterwards. I mean, no, I think early on. I mean, the assistant associate minister here, Graham Best at the time, who's now, I mean, all those ministers of those times have now passed except for Dave Burton. And I wish he doesn't pass too quickly. But
I need to get him on the pod, I think.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting. He had a very colourful career after he left here. He went to the Outback, and that sort of thing. Anyway, so Graham encouraged me greatly, and I started going to every year to the Katoomba Men's Convention. A group of guys here would get together and go up, and found that very encouraging. There was some great teaching. We started going almost when that convention first started, and that was fantastic. And I was encouraged to sort of get involved in the men's ministry, which I did with Graham, and we did that for several years, and just became involved in helping in the craft and market days and things like that. Just, you know, whatever was needed to be done, I'd just sort of try and make myself available to help out. And then sometime after that, I was invited to nominate to be on the leadership, which I did. And then when the previous treasurer, John Pring, who's Craig's dad, he was the treasurer, had been for many, many years, gave 12 months' notice, and then spent 12 months trying to find somebody to fob it off onto. And he asked me, would I do it? And I sort of prayed about it. I thought, well, I don't want to, but I'll give it a go.
Yeah.
And it's been okay. I tried to give it. I tried to give it away a few years ago, but yeah, I actually gave the church 12 months' notice. It must have been I can't remember which side of COVID it was. I gave them 12 months' notice, and but then things started to change here a lot, and then I think once it became apparent that we needed to do something regarding our future, and then the possible talk of merging with somebody sort of made me think, well, I should hang on. Maybe there's something I can offer in helping out with that. And so I've stuck with it and still here.
Speaking of which, the kind of saying that you need to look at other options as a church. Can you speak to and give us your personal perspective on the continually growing friendship between Soul Revival leading up to choosing to combine? What were your thoughts around that? And because we've heard from John previously and from Rob, so not John, we've heard from Craig. Sorry, yeah, John is Craig's dad.
Yeah,
we've heard from Craig and Rob. Just interested to hear your perspective and thoughts around it, and how you think it's turned out so far.
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, I mean, when Heath left us, we had a succession of visiting Sunday speakers. And then at one point, Stuart was invited to come along and speak one Sunday, and that particular day that he came to speak, he invited the leadership to his house for lunch afterwards. And during that lunch, we just started having a discussion, and he was asking us, what we were looking towards, what sort of things did we want to do in the future, and somewhere out of that came the suggestion that Stuart would be willing and would love to help us out in whatever way he could, and the discussion evolved from that, and I think when the suggestion came that Stuart said he would be willing to offer himself as an interim for 6 months, something in my mind told me that this felt right. I mean, we'd sort of had some attempts previously at talking about merging with different groups, but somehow this felt right. And then as the discussions with Stuart went on, I just felt the conviction of the Holy Spirit that this was God leading this friendship.
Right.
I mean, that's how Stuart described it in the first place, friendship. And I still see it as that. It's hard to sort of put it all together. I hadn't been thinking about this previously. I was thinking about other things I might talk about today, but I hadn't been thinking about that. But I think that when we started having the discussions, it just felt right. And then Craig and I one night went along and met the council over at Kirrawee.
Yeah, I remember you came, yep.
Yeah. And I walked away that night thinking, gee, they were a lovely, friendly bunch of people.
That's nice.
And And then every time I sort of met somebody from Soul Revival after that, New Year's, a whole lot of us, we didn't have a service here. New Year's
we
Eve.
had the combined New Year's
we had
service.
the combined
lovely,
New Year's service when Paul spoke. I was wrapped in that service. I really got to say, I think Paul is a star. I just love listening to Paul. That was the first time I'd heard him.
Oh, yeah.
And I walked away and I was buzzing for days after hearing it. I think I need to hear Paul. I need to hear more of Paul.
Yeah.
And then he came here and I think he did 2 or 3 weeks in a row. Oh, fantastic. He's a great man. Love him.
Yeah, we love having him.
And just after all those things, everything just started to just gel and come together, and it just felt natural. Nothing has happened since that has given me any cause for concern, or everybody is just a friendly, great bunch of people. And I just, having met with the wardens many times with the meetings that we were preparing for the combination, feel so comfortable with their leadership. Have no hesitation in following them as leaders.
Okay.
Great bunch of people.
That's very heartwarming to hear.
Yeah. I mean, Stuart is naturally a very charismatic man, and he's got a fair degree of pulling power. But for me, it was the I don't know. I feel it was the strength of the wardens and the leadership in general.
Okay.
That was the pulling point for me, because I sort of had to. It went through my mind: if we go through this, and for whatever reason Stuart's not here, do we still want to go through it? And my answer was unequivocally yes. That with or without Stuart, we need to be part of Soul Revival, because the system is a system that I've. This is what we've been looking for.
Oh, okay.
A system that really works, and I'm super encouraged about what the future holds.
I think we've also, and Brandon will be able to speak to this better than I, but we've also been really encouraged by MCC and especially the leadership team's openness to just work together in friendship rather than working against each other. And and I think that's part of the reason why the decision seems like a reasonably easy decision. I feel like that's what you're saying. When it came to it, the time to make a decision, it felt like it was. Yeah,
I mean, there's no hidden agendas on either side. It's what you see is what you get.
Yeah, I think we've appreciated that. Do you want to add to that?
I think for me it was just highlighted by the two annual general meetings that we had. I had the privilege of being at both. I didn't realise the Miranda one was the Miranda vote week until I rocked up, which was like, oh, do I have to leave? Like, can I be here for this?
Yeah, am I allowed to?
I was like, it was fun. It was lovely. Ray, you actually read it out, the votes, after it happened. And I think that's when it kind of I was kind of oblivious to kind of the magnitude of the decision.
Yeah, I mean,
and again, magnitude may be the wrong word. I think, it was just a really lovely, I think, moment to have afterwards, where it was like, oh wow, this has been thoughtful and prayed through, and the motivation behind it was, how can we get the gospel out to these people that are all around us? God's put us in this place. What is the best way moving forward that we can be sharing the gospel to these people around us? And I think that was really lovely, having that moment at Miranda. And then also when the Miranda leadership joined us at Soul Revival's annual general meeting earlier this year, was really, I think it was both were a lovely celebration of the gospel-heartedness that was going on in both, and how can we be looking to share God's love, truth and love in the Shire, in Miranda, in Kirrawee, in wherever God places us. And I think that's what I was encouraged from getting to be at both of those.
I mean, as a leadership, I mean, in all honesty, I think we were a little concerned about the size of the vote, in the positive or whatever. There had been one or two people that had sort of been a little bit unhappy about what was going on. Having said that, they're still here.
That's good.
So I wasn't making a point of going around spruiking it or anything to everybody, but the thing that encouraged me was that the leadership combined were 100% behind the decision. There was no disunity whatsoever in the leadership. And I think that was the fact that we were trying to then get on to the rest of the church. So the leadership was totally behind it. You know, we may in the past possibly not have been aligned on some things, but we certainly were on this. And then on the day for it to be 90%, that was. I
was surprised about how high it was, which it was
fabulous.
Good.
Yeah, yeah.
Can I ask you just one question around that? It's do you feel vindicated in terms of the decision that you wanted to make? Do you feel like it's been a really good step forward?
Oh, absolutely, no question. I mean, I think there are benefits on both sides. I mean, you know,
absolutely.
Yeah, the fact that we're now able to financially contribute to Soul Revival, enable them to put more staff on, and which can only grow the gospel.
Yeah,
and the help that's given us, because you know, to be fair, we had no real direction about where we were going, and we've now got a purpose. We've got a direction. And we've got solid Bible teaching every week.
Yeah, that always helps with growing the gospel, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Having the word preached.
Having it preached.
Yeah, having it preached, yeah.
Yeah.
You just mentioned before that there was other things you were thinking about talking about today. Have we missed anything?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it was just, you know, you told me previously, you know, you'd sort of asked me about how I became a Christian, and they were sort of things that I was thinking about. And, you know, I just think that I feel blessed.
Well, we're really blessed to have you on this podcast. But I do want to ask you the last question that we ask everyone. Looking back over your life, and you said you became a Christian in your 40s, which is not often the story that we hear, but this is the reason we do the podcast, is to hear these different kind of stories from people. What would you tell your younger Christian self what you know now?
What would I tell my younger Christian self? I think I'd give myself an uppercut and
Is that it?
They'd tell me to listen a bit more carefully. It would have been great to have been born again when I was a teenager. I wasn't. I can't change that. So I can only be grateful that it did happen. But what could I tell my younger self? I don't know. Would I have listened? I don't know. Would I have listened to myself? Probably not.
Why did you say, you said though, listen more? Why were you saying
that?
I
don't know. I mean, I think anybody who's young, full of their own ideas and things like that. I mean, I don't know. It's all in, I like to think it's in God's timing. You know, even though I hadn't been saved until 1997, in hindsight and looking back, I can still see God's influence in my life. I can still see that there were things that he was doing to protect me, to look after me, to teach me, even though I may not have been aware of it. I think I'm aware of it now.
Yeah.
And one of my favourite sayings, that hindsight is a wonderful thing, but it doesn't do you much good except to maybe you can encourage somebody else not to make the same mistakes.
Yeah. I often feel like that sometimes. That it's like, why didn't I just listen to God at this time? And then, well, maybe now I know that I can just help someone else that's a bit younger and say, hey, God was telling me this and I didn't listen.
Yeah, I mean, like when I was at Sunday school, like at, say, age 11, 12, 13, I mean, I can remember those times very clearly that the teaching was excellent teaching. It was as good as you could get, but I didn't take it on board. Like why I didn't take it on board, I don't know. I must have taken it on board to some degree.
Yeah.
Because I like to think that I did make a lot of correct choices in my life, knowing that this was the right thing to do, that it would have been unchristianly to do things in a different way. Yeah. So that aspect of it, certainly, it was the seed that was planted that took a long time to germinate, but it did.
I like that way to finish up. The seed that was planted a long time to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, thank you so much, Ray, for taking the time to come and share your life with us. And we've got to know you so much better now. And as we put the podcast out, so many other people will get to know you a lot more. I think I've been really encouraged. I like hearing stories that are sometimes different. A lot of the people I became a Christian in our teenage years. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's beautiful. But to hear someone who became a Christian a bit later in life, I really like hearing that perspective. So, and also about printing. I might have to get you on the communications team, Ray. At some point anyway. But thank you. It's been a pleasure having you on, and we're really thankful and grateful, as you said before, to your faithfulness and to MCC especially, and then as Soul Revival and MCC have come together and now part of Soul Revival, it's onwards and upwards, which is really awesome.
Yeah, I sort of, one last thing, I just reflect on Thursday of last week. You rang me to ask me to do the podcast, and I missed the call, and you left a voice message, and you said, "Hi, this is Joel from church." And that really sunk in. I thought, Joel from church. I mean, it's not Joel from Soul Revival or it's just Joel from church.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought, we are one church.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a good touch.
Oh, I'm glad. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I shared that with Stuart. I said,
cool.
I said, Joel rang, and he said, "This is Joel from church." And I said, That's the sort of things that I'm really enjoying now, that we are one church.
Right. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you. Final words, Braden.
Oh, just thank you so much, Ray. I've enjoyed getting to hear all about your story. Listen to a fellow graphic designer.
Don't hold that against me.
I hold it against him. So.
But yeah, just how faithfully you've served the community here at Miranda, and the way that, like, you're one of the first people from MCC that I met along the way. Yeah, me too. And it's been really great to hear how God has used you even before you say you became a Christian or started knowingly following God with all your heart. I think He obviously looked after you the entire way and planted seeds, and He made them grow, and I think it's really encouraging. And I found out which one of your kids. Look at all the family. I'll figure it out eventually. It'll go both ways. You'll figure out who's related everywhere. But I think that's the exciting thing is now it's like, wow, this, like I said to Stu the other day, like, it's crazy, a bit longer than 6 months ago now, but like, it's crazy thinking of that God has had this in His plan all along, and now we get to have this adventure together of trying to figure out how we can share the gospel. And I think that's the encouraging thing. I was here last night with a few people setting up for youth. We're having combined youth group stuff tonight, and it's just like, wow, like 8 months ago, whatever, I would have just driven past this church and gone, oh, there's a church there, that's nice. And now I'm like sitting here setting up lights and stuff and trying to think through how we can have our young people being friends and loving Jesus together. And I think that's the cool thing is you don't know what's in God's plan. But
that's right. And we've got these, I consider we've got some great facilities here, and it's just fantastic that they're being used.
Yeah, it's cool to, you don't know what God's got in plan, but it's fun to get to be a part of it, isn't it? And we get to do it together.
And it's in His timing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep, His timing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, thank you, Ray, once again. Thank you to everyone that's been listening or watching, and it's nice to wrap up the chips. Yeah. As we bring that back. Wrap up the chips.
Chip buddy.
Yeah. Oh, a chip buddy. Jeez, that'd be right for lunch, wouldn't it?
That would hit pretty hard. I haven't had breakfast yet. And I haven't had coffee, so I'm like, I'm ready.
But we always like to finish with one way, Ray. So we'll do that. And thank you again.
Thank you.
One way.